One.
One.
All right. Did it show you that we're recording? Okay.
This is awesome. Yes.
All right. Hold on one sec. No, it didn't allow me to see. Um, it didn't allow me to see the waiting room.
Ooh, hello.
Même pas encore un adulte est déjà face à des accusations liées au terrorisme. Un adolescent de la région de Québec s'inspirait d'un groupe néo-nazi. Un jeune de la région de Québec propageait des vidéos de haine et de violence depuis quelques années que les organisations extrémistes ciblaient les personnes de plus en plus jeunes. 5 000 $ pour vous inciter à acheter des autos électriques. Ottawa rétablit les subventions pour les 5 prochaines années et annonce des mesures pour soutenir l'industrie.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our presentation, and we will get going. So,
Ja, George, to večer slušat.
all right. Everybody can
Mostly blessed.
mute. That would help. All right. Our presentation is creating a therapeutic story through a solution-focused case conceptualization. My name's Michael Reiter. I'm a faculty member at Capella University, and I'm also in private practice. And my colleagues are.
Arlene, you're on mute. Thank you. My name is Arlene Brett Gordon, and I am in private practice right now. I was the director of the family therapy clinic at Nova Southeastern University for 16 years.
And I'm Carol Messmore, and I'm a faculty member at Capella University, and I also have a small private practice.
A little bit of a story about the three of us. We are all graduates from the doctoral program at Nova Southeastern University in Fort Lauderdale. In 1991, Insoo Kimberg and Steve DeShaza came to our school, being invited by our faculty member, Lee Schultz, who was a solution-focused brief therapist. At that point, not many of the universities were open to doing brief therapy, but we were created through Brad Keeney's work and his students' work from Texas Tech, and very open to new ideas. So Insoo and Steve started coming to our school for every 2 years, and all the students benefited from that. Her generosity, his generosity, lit candles in our program.
And we were also fortunate that in our community, they funded social service agencies to use the solution-focused model in their work with the families. So Insoo came down regularly and did trainings with the service providers, and Arlene led those trainings, which that's how I also became more involved with Insoo through that. So we became a solution-focused community in South Florida.
Also, through Lee Schultz, began the beginning of the WOW program, which is now internationally known for using solution-focused work in schools. So all that was generated in the 90s in South Florida, and the three of us were able to be part of that.
So, as you all probably know, there are some basic tenets to the model that it aligns with brief therapy. It's goal oriented, it is time limited, and it looks to change interactional patterns in the family. And the difference with solution focus is that it's looking at the future. It doesn't delve into the past. So it's looking what's going on right now and what changes can happen is the future. Based in social construction, the client is the expert. It's strength based, and the tools, the keys, the interventions in the model are looking to uncover resources and strengths. So change happens by the clients doing more of what works.
These are our
Hi.
here you see a slide that we share with you, the solution focused brief therapy keys tools. These are those tools in our model that we utilize with our clients, whether they're individuals, whether we're in schools, whether we're working with businesses, with that whatever context that we are working with. So we tend to look for exceptions. We tend to complement what our clients are doing well. We ask the miracle question to explore what our clients want in relationship to our work with them. We scale things like progress or hopefulness, coping. How did they manage to do as well as they have, and what do they need to keep on doing? And formula tests. So these are our tools, and how do we apply them with different cultures in different contexts?
Right.
Next.
So one of our main objectives today is to talk about how whatever therapy you do, what you're doing is you're creating therapeutic stories. And stories are important because stories are how people understand themselves. Usually we think about stories in terms of narrative therapy, but every therapy model creates stories. And it's what are those stories that are being created? Because a story provides a framework for people. And for us as therapists, so the three of us are therapists, the notion is therapy itself is a story that people come in with one story, and we hope that they leave with a different story, a story that's more useful for them. So, where do these therapeutic stories come from? Well, they come from your case conceptualization. And your a case conceptualization is how do you take in certain information and make sense of it? So usually in case conceptualization, there's these three main components. How do you take in information and put it all together clinically? So, in a kind of more formal setting, this would be the intake and the biopsychosocial, all of the assessments that you do to then make a sense of here's what's going on for the client. Based on that, we then say, here's what we want to have happen for the client. So that's our treatment goals. And then our case conceptualization will have, based on our model, here's the way that we're going to get from where they are to where they want to go. So what are those intervention strategies? So one of the ways that we look at how do we make that movement in case conceptualization from where are they at to where they want to go is through what's called recursive frame analysis. So you heard Arlene talk about Brad Keeney, who was the founder of the family therapy program at Nova Southeastern University, where we all graduated. He developed what's called recursive frame analysis, initially in terms of how do you map what's happening in the therapy session? What's the therapy talk? And the big thing is you can look at the therapy talk to see does what that talk is about change or not. And if it doesn't change, then there's no movement in the session and probably no positive change for the client. Um, so recursive frame analysis was looked at as just a mapping, as a qualitative research method, but the main way that we use it is as a generative framework for therapy. And that happens based on the current iteration of RFA is in 3 acts. So these are the acts that Keeney has put currently, that clients come to therapy with an impoverished experience, that there's something happening in their life that they don't like, and they don't view themselves as being able to handle that. Somewhere along the way, there's a transition that the therapy talk changes from what's not happening for them to something else, and then goes to Act 3 that they experience themselves with a resourceful experience. So I'm going to talk about our way of understanding. So we changed RFA a little bit to really talk about identity. And identity is quite important. How do people understand who they are? So identity is a person's sense of self. So I'm a strong person. I'm a do-gooder. Well, a lot of clients come in to see us, or I'm depressed, I'm an anxious person, and uh, couples and families also have identities. We're, uh, a conflictual couple. Our family is, out of control. Once we have an identity, we tend to endorse behaviors that go with that identity and don't do behaviors uh, that aren't with that identity. So if someone comes in with an identity of, I'm a shy person, they'll probably likely look at a situation and say, I'm shy, so I can't go up to that person. I can't talk to them. I'm shy, so I'm going to sit back and I'm going to stay here. When we do that, the people in our environment tend to act towards us the way that our identity uh, is. And so that recursive uh, process between I'm shy, I don't engage, someone doesn't engage me. See, I can't talk to people, I'm shy. So that's something in our therapy that we try to focus on. How do we help people get out of the identities that limit them? So our modification of the RFA is that in Act 1, people come to therapy with a limiting identity. And within that limiting identity are lots of behaviors. So if a couple comes to us and, we're a conflictual couple, then there's going to be lots of behaviors that they talk about of, we yell at each other, we don't listen to one another, we call each other names, tons and tons of behaviors that support that limiting identity. And one of the things that we want to do in therapy, for us, the change from Act 1 to Act 2, is to be able to identify and hear what are the identities that they do have, because people have multiple identities. What are the identities that they do have that are resourceful for them, that are useful for them? And once we identify them, then we move into Act 3. How do we help them to implement those resourceful identities? Oh, sorry. All right, Kara.
Yeah, okay. Having a problem with my mute. So if we're looking at solution-focused therapeutic stories, the difference, like was said before, is that some models may conceptualize the therapeutic story based on the problem and dissecting that problem. And that's not what the solution focus stance does. we're looking at solution building. We're looking at exceptions to the problem. I just really love listen, select, and build. And that's how we do this in the model. We're listening to the client and we're selecting through exception questions, scaling questions, the miracle questions. We're pulling out strengths and resources and then building that identity with them for their next act. So the resourceful identity, the identity that has strengths, the identity that has the ability to be successful, where they want to go. So it's all about what we do. They're interconnected. It's what we do as a therapist, what we pull out when we listen to their story. And then we feed back into our conversation. So we need to guide in our conversation solution building. It doesn't just happen by a question. We have to pull out certain parts of what they tell us. Because our clients, I mean, you all see this, they tend to go back to that problem saturated identity. And so we keep pulling out the strengths and resources by using the different tools and questions and then help them create that the solution that they want in their future.
So our understanding of an RFA from a solution-focused case conceptualization is what you see before you, that in Act 1, people come in and talk about, here's what's going wrong in my life. What solution-focused therapy talks about, problem talk. And even if we try from the very beginning, what are your best hopes from coming here? Tell me what's better since you've made the appointment. More so than not, clients will come back to, here's why I'm coming, because I'm depressed, I'm anxious, my partner had an affair, we have lousy communication. So while the client, and one of the things that for me especially is important is that we acknowledge the client when so there's some, and maybe we'll have time for discussion after. Some solution-focused therapists say we never talk about the problem. And that's not the case when you look at Insu and Steve's work, and it's definitely not the case when you look at my work, that we want to acknowledge what the client's saying and then also hear what they're not saying. And this is especially a case if a couple comes in and one partner says, my partner never listens to me. For the therapist to say, oh, we're not going to talk about problems, then you're recapitulating what the problem is with the partner. So when they're talking, here's what's not going well, that's what they have in focus. We're also listening to what's the unfocused focus. What are they not seeing? So what's in the background? So when they say, I'm depressed, then we're also hearing, I'm not depressed, sometimes. And when they're not depressed, how are they? I'm a happy person. The I'm a happy person isn't what's prominent for them, but what are those small times when they have viewed themselves as I'm a happy person, I'm a calm person, we are a loving couple, um, we're a family that listens to one another. So we start to listen to those and start to bring them to those identities to the surface, and then that gets us into Act 2, identifying those past resourceful identities. And lots of different ways that we can do that through a solution-focused lens, asking miracle question, asking exception questions, even if they're having such a hard time doing so, asking coping questions. Once we do have those identities identified, then we ask them, okay, so when you viewed yourself and had that sense of, I'm, a capable person, what were you able to do then that you weren't able to do otherwise? And then we can focus on what are those uh, behaviors and ways of being that help support those resourceful identities. So what we'd like to do now is talk to you about two case examples to kind of go through this process, and then hopefully have some time for a discussion about some of these ideas.
So my case was a individual. A woman came in with her presenting issue of feeling very worthless and anxious. And it was these ideas were given to her by her biological family, her mother and her siblings. She was an adult with grown children, adult children, and she had been recently divorced out of a long-term relationship over at least 25 years, married to this man. She had been just over a year out of that relationship. And so she was not sleeping, lots of issues that she brought in. And they started only recently. She felt like her family loved her, and until she actually started saying no to her family. So when we talked about what she wanted to have happen in therapy using the miracle question, her miracle was that her family would say thank you for her, everything that she did. They would tell her how much they love her, that her mother would actually mother her. She never felt like she could go to her mother and ask her mother to do anything for her. She always did for her family. She was the oldest daughter. Mom was a single mom, so mom worked. She helped her younger siblings with schoolwork, cooked dinner, made sure they got to bed. She mothered her siblings. And so this time right now was the first time that she stood up for herself and started taking care of herself. And her family reacted in this way by telling her that she was selfish, that she didn't know what she was doing, she should not have divorced her husband. And so she came into therapy because her family told her that she wasn't any good, so she must not be good. And so that was her problem talk. Her miracle of the family all of a sudden doing a turnaround was a little bit too big of a miracle. That was a goal that was not achievable because none of them lived in the same town. They all lived in different states around the country. Nobody was interested in having family therapy because I asked if she wanted to have them in, and no, but she had tried that. Nobody wanted it. They just said that she was a problem and she needed to go get herself straightened out. So she came into therapy. So we talked about different goals, and her goal then of her marriage, she just wanted to be happy. She wanted to wake up in the morning, feel good about herself, and believe in herself and do what she has wanted to do for a long time. She's wanted to do things that her marriage and her responsibilities didn't allow her to do, whether it's travel or have different hobbies. So she wanted to wake up in the morning and be able to plan her day. That was her miracle. And so we talked about I did acknowledge we had to talk about her problems because she did acknowledge the fact that she never had the mother she wished she had had. And her mother wasn't going to change overnight to be different. So we really did have to talk about that. And so that she could accept her family and love them as they are. And so she could move past that. She wasn't going to change. She could not be happy. She could not have her goal of being happy and still make her family happy, her brothers and sisters and mother happy. So the things that they wanted her to do were things like she would always run family events and organize, the family reunions and really pay for everything and put everything together. So she's one heck of an organizer, is what I heard when she was telling me what she did. So through exception questions, I was able to find out that she's one heck of a mom. I mean, her adult children and live in the same area. They have activities they do together. They communicate with each other all the time. They have met. She has a new man in her life. Her children are happy about that because they see their mom happy. And so it's a very successful relationship between this mom and her children. And further, her ex-husband, they have a fabulous divorce, one of the best I've ever worked with clients with a divorce, that over holidays, he'll come to the holiday dinner with his new partner and her new partner's there. Everyone gets along. Her ex-husband will still, if her mother does live in the area. So if her mother needs something and she's in her 80s, her ex-husband has gone to the house to put up storm shutters because he'll say, she was my mother-in-law for 25 years. So the strength of her being able to create this connected, loving family in her immediate, with her children, her ex-husband, her new partner, and her mother kind of on the side. Her mother sort of goes back and forth. It was a real strength, and that's what she wanted. That was the family environment that she wanted, and she had it. She had it. She'd been at her job, the same job for over 20 years, very successful, seen as a leader, had won awards at her job. So, I mean, she's very successful. When she left her marriage, her ex-husband kept the family home. She bought a new condo. She owned her own home for the first time ever. She owned her own home, and she was just really, really just impressed herself by being able to do that. So she had the strengths of being organized, being loving, helping her family stay together, but they all were reciprocal on it. Everyone worked with each other and helped each other out. And she could ask her ex-husband, her partner, her children for help as they ask her for help. So the shift was she never felt that she could ask her siblings or her mother for help. She still does not ask her mother for help. But that's another relationship we're working on. So the act two, we were able to uncover all of these strengths. So the act three, we were able to really define what her goal was, where her 10 on that scaling question was, and how she could move towards that 10. And the 10 was she was happy in her job. She felt fulfilled with her relationship. She was able to have time for her children and her own hobbies. And she had a relationship with her ex-husband. And they were very good friends, she and her ex-husband. She said they really were friends her whole marriage. They just never made it to an intimate or romantic level. So she valued that friendship, and her partner is wonderful and understands that. And his partner, her ex-husband's partner, also understands that. So it's quite a unique situation. So through pulling out, listening to her talk about what she did, I was able to pull out her strengths and resources and then build on those. So she was able to see that she had what she wanted, that happiness, and she was able to move towards that. So she is moving towards letting go of her expectations of her family. And she includes them in everything that she does, but she doesn't do for them anymore. She does for herself, for her children, her units, and that's what she plans for rather than planning for their families. So she's kind of reclaimed her stake and her own area and valuing herself.
Right. So there we see, a client who had a had at least one identity of I'm a worthwhile person, I'm important. And when for those of us that are therapists, when we've worked with clients that I don't deserve anything, I'm an awful person, I'm meaningless, then they tend to not do things for themselves, not have a voice. So here was someone that reconnected to their identity of I'm worthwhile and valued herself and valued her relationships with other people. As we talked about, identity isn't just an individual thing. Couples have identity, families have identity, organizations have identity. Solution-focused organization has an identity. So we're going to talk about a case now of a couple and how their identity changed over therapy.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to share with you a couple that met in the military. They were both serving in Afghanistan, I think. I'm sorry, some horrible place. But what it did, it made them very close very quickly. And they became very, very good friends. And then they became lovers. And then they conceived a young baby who turned out to be the focus of their lives. They were both very, very much in love with this child. And even though they both ended up leaving the military about a year ago, they decided that they were going to remain a couple because they wanted to co-parent this little boy and become a family. When I met them, it was a husband and a wife. She would say things like, I can't trust him. She had found information on the phone that was very, very upsetting to her. And I think we can agree that we're all hearing about people finding information that's upsetting to their partners. Um, he would see her as very negative, that she wasn't very complimentary, that she didn't notice how he was trying. He referred to her as having OCD and wanting everything to be perfect. And he could scrub for 3 days and she would find the one spot on the floor. He also said that she was no longer, she was unaffectionate with him. She was no longer, as they got back into the world and they both got jobs and they were both parenting this little boy, she was no longer affectionate to him. And that her manner with him had changed greatly. And she came back with, well, he gets angry very, very quickly. And so he needs anger management. Until he gets anger management, how can I be affectionate to this man? She saw these things as very, very connected. As a result, he saw that it was very, very hard to stay in love with her. That she, even though he felt like he was trying, it was never noticed. And they both felt that they were very, very different and that they needed to communicate much better. So this was a relation that was formed within a community, the military, and sort of a bubble. And the baby was born in that bubble. And once they came back to experience life and work and the challenges of raising their child outside in the world that we live in, all of a sudden they began to have more and more of this problem talk. So what we talked about is you guys are so different. How did you get to that place where you ended up getting married, creating, their miracle was to be able to co-parent this child together. That was that was their primary miracle, that they could work together, that they could be a team. Their goal, their hope, their primary miracle was that they could actually stay married and be partners and lovers. But what they wanted to do is really frame so much about how they co-parent. So how they stress their ability to work together was they looked at their past, their resources together. They were great friends. They enjoyed each other's company. Um, and they were in some very challenging situations, but they managed to work together. They saw each other as a team. They were helpful to each other. They were good resources to each other. They liked each other, and they were able to collaborate. And the one thing that they were always able to see was the strength in their collaboration for their young son. They both wanted to be very proactive parents. They wanted the other to be a very proactive parent. So they wanted to really, really work together. Their miracle was to work together so that they could somehow, no matter what happens within the intimacy of their relationship, they would be together for this child. And they kept going on about how they were able to do those things that showed partnership and and working together as teammates, such as cooking together, being with their son together, enjoying their son together, picking out school together. So they saw themselves as working as a team. So how could they make this team become one of intimacy? So at the end, what we did was we utilized their miracle, which was to work together as a team and to continue to collaborate to find solutions. We wove in the exceptions that we mentioned in Act Two, and they had many of them because they had spent together lots of time as friends prior to becoming lovers and parents. We looked at those times they are currently able to collaborate. So this is a couple that made a decision that they weren't ready to make a decision whether they should stay married or they should co-parent. And how they did that was that they ended up, well, they had two homes. One was closer to the father's work and one was closer to the mother's. And that was fine for that. Well, that was not a problem for them. And what would happen is mother would come to father's in the middle of the week on Wednesday because the little boy was living with dad close to the school. So mother and father were integrating time together during the week, and during the weekend, the dad and the child would go to the mother's house. So the parents continued to spend time together as parents for this child and spending time together deciding if they were going to stay as a couple. They decided that they were going to do even more family activities with with extended family. She was a woman whose family was from the islands. He was a white guy out of Tennessee. He loved the experience of her family. They loved him. He wanted to do more extended family activities. They talked about no matter where this couple goes in romantic relationships, how as co-parents could they continue to do and engage in their son's activities together. So at Act Three, they have decided to continue to work on the decision as couple, but are very much working as co-parents and as friends. They told me that they loved each other, and now they have to become enlightened with each other again. So that's my solution focused example.
All right. So probably for any of you that have worked with couples, you frequently get the couple that comes in and say, "We're roommates." So that has become their identity, and when that's their identity, we're roommates. There's some behaviors that make sense of maybe saying, okay, who does these chores, who does these chores? And there's some behaviors that don't make sense. Sexual intimacy usually doesn't make sense between roommates, but between lovers, yes, it does. So that's kind of our quick overview of how do we utilize a model to then understand how do we use all the tools in our model to come together to create, to shift from their problem story to what's a solution story, but what we call a therapeutic story, one where they see themselves in a more resourceful way, and then the behaviors that they do help to support that new resourceful identity. So what we'd like to do now is we'd love to have a conversation with y'all about these ideas. We can talk about it, and we can talk about how it can go through the RFA.
So, as an MFT academic, I know that one of the challenges is in that Act 1 to help new therapists hear the unsaid, to focus on the unfocused, and that often takes a lot of practice because it doesn't come naturally to do so. That's not what we automatically do in our culture. So what are some thoughts that you have on that?
For me, one of the big ones is that, especially for students, but all of us, to have presupposition, to believe that there are times. So I'm an academic, and uh, so when training students, when they're going for exceptions, has there ever been a time when, say, no, 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 believe that there has been a time. So when were you able to come together as a team? Believe it, make them, and if they ever say, oh, we haven't, you to be able to then challenge that. Some things to accept what clients say, and some things to say, let's give it a little more time and use it apart a little more. But for me, I'd say the main thing is to really believe that are those identities and behaviors that haven't been focused on, but are there. I don't know, Arlene, Kara?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important if a student is going to use solution focus, that they really place themselves in the position that they believe their clients have strengths and resources. They know that a problem doesn't happen 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's times when what the client wants is happening. It's just not seen. So it's how do we help the clients pay attention to what works and less attention to what's not working. So it's flipping the language. So with students, it's helping them walk out of the problem saturated story that they're holding and believing the strengths and resources of their clients. Arlene?
Unmute.
Got to do the mute button.
I think people who use a solution focused perspective are naturally hopeful. And I think that comes out in our conversations with the people that we work with. I also was a first grade school teacher. So as I listen to my clients' stories, I hear amongst the problem saturated conversation, I hear exceptions or places where I might ask an exception. And I think of a yellow highlighter. Remember those yellow highlighters that got us through school? And what they do is they pop the words out of the page. So as I'm listening to my clients, I'm highlighting in my mind certain words. And how do I give them back to my clients as exceptions? And how do they hear them that way? So that way I'm using my clients' exact language, but I don't forget it because I've highlighted it.
Other comments, questions? We'd love to hear.
There's one thought. A lot of my interns are working in sites and they want to do solution focus, and they are those hopeful people, like Arlene said. But they're schooled in their sites to, do these certain kinds of assessments and intakes and diagnoses and stuff. So how do you hold both of those things where they want to, to do solution focus, but they also have to adhere to the restrictions or the expectations of their sites and creating treatment plans
Treatment
that
plans, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think solution focus works really well with that. I do treatment plans because I bill insurance, and I use a scaling question as my measurement of the progress goals. So I help students, if I'm working with them, teaching them how to do a treatment plan, that the goal one, measurable and achievable, and then you can create a scaling question for it. And they can even your clients will come back going, up, I'm a 7 this week. And or we slip down to a 3, and gives you a place to start. So that's a great way to measure that treatment plan goal. And the diagnosis is just another description. It's just another description of what the behavior is for the client.
Mhm.
So I think it does work in that case.
I think also maybe sort of distancing ourselves with respect to a lot of the paperwork that we have to do in the jobs that we have. So sort of saying, for us to move on, these are the things that we need to cover. And how do they use whatever useful highlighted the information they get when they actually want to do solution focused work? So I think Carol's right. There's a way to navigate the differences.
Well, if we hold that, what is both ends? Both
Mhm.
we can do assessment
Thank you.
and we can utilize a solution-focused lens. That usually what's happening in those assessments for a lot of them is what's not working.
Yeah.
And that's one of the rules of solution-focused therapy, understanding what's not working so that the client has a sense of it and then they can do something different. Okay, so this is going wrong, and how much do you want that in your life? Okay, so that you don't want. Okay. So I'd say kind of having them view the assessments as not antithetical to solution-focused therapy, but supportive of,
Hmm.
in terms of this helps me and the client to know how they don't want to be. And then, okay, so this is happening. You don't want that. What do you want instead? And hopefully a good assessment will also have that. Usually in biopsychosocials, there's only that one little section, strengths, but your students can stay there a bit longer.
And what Insoo Berg wrote a book on building solutions in child social
Protective.
services,
Yeah.
protective services. It's got a yellow cover.
Yeah.
But in that book are a number of forms she created that align with social service agency treatment plans, biopsychosocials. And she did that so that people could have solution focused templates to use in their work. So I think you can get that book probably for $5 now on Thrift Books. It's that old, but the forms are in the back of the book.
It's right here.
She was always giving like that. She
Yes.
sharing her ideas.
It's also how she realized when there was a gap. And she worked to fill that gap. Like when funding would only be given if you had research, right? So all of a sudden they began to do a lot of research in social services so they could get funding. There was always that move to spread solution focus to everybody because it was such a magical way of communicating with people. So in relationship, I mean, I tell my clients or my students all the time, practice this with your family. I mean, this is a wonderful way to be in the world. And we don't see solution-focused therapists burn out because they like their clients. They see they're empathetic. They see their clients as people who have challenges and would like some support getting through those challenges. So it has been a very positive model to work with.
Yeah. And
So
this is where, if we talk about what's the story in therapy, those stories, those therapies that really focus on, okay, let's dig deep into the trauma and tease it apart and takes a long time. You as the therapist are there with that problem story for a long time. Uh, Usually in solution focused therapy, and hopefully all therapies, the shift from Act One to Act Two isn't years, months, or weeks. It's in that session you can move from Act One to Act Two and hopefully to Act Three. Now, there's a recursiveness there. Perhaps the next week they come in, or even in that session, even if you move to Act Three, it might move back to Act Two for a time, or Act One, and then move two to three. So, but for the most part, when you're in Act Two and Act Three, the ambiance and the energy in the room
mhm.
is so uplifting for clients and for you as a therapist that, yeah, um, that's one remedy for burnout. We have like 5 minutes left. You can put something in the chat or you can go off mic. Or we did such an amazing job explaining things so clearly. That's that's how we'll understand it. So
Boy, we did a good job.
That's our Act Three, right?
So a lot of us know each other for a very long time, and it's it says something about solution focused work that we keep doing this work and keep training it and keep sharing it and keep practicing it and seeing and teaching it because it is so helpful to so many people.
okay, last question. Charmaine
Question.
asked,
Yeah.
one of the critiques of solution-focused therapy is it's way too cheerleady. Oh, you're doing so great. Yes, that it only praises clients. So the question is, what's your take on that?
Me?
You, me, Carol, anybody? I know for me,
Well,
it's this is where for me, the distinction between solution focused therapy and solution forced therapy. And
Ooh.
the solution forced is kind of the, oh, you're great, everything's great. If like the three rules of solution focused therapy, the order I put them in is, um, if it's working, don't mess with it. That one kind of to the side. The second one I think is the one that gets overlooked the most, is if it's not working, don't do it again. And people really only look at the do something different. And there, for me, that's where in Act One, to acknowledge where the person is. What's, where are you at? And is that working for you and not working for you? That's not working for you. So that part I wouldn't hold as the kind of cheerleading part, that you acknowledge that the person's having struggles and the person's doing things that they'd rather not do, or they have people in their lives that are doing things that they don't want to do. And kind of highlighting that for them. Okay, this is how you don't want to be, but then understanding you don't want to be that way. So how do you want to be instead? Um,
So I take the approach that this is not rainbows and unicorns. That is not what therapy is. Our clients are going to cry, and our clients are going to argue with each other on the couch in front of us, and you're still doing solution focused therapy. It doesn't mean you're failure if everyone isn't hugging and kissing. So when I talk about compliments, I I advise them to do it sparingly, that it should be done with genuine, it should be a genuine compliment. It's not a participation trophy. They're not pinning it on their client's chest. That it should really be, wow, how did you do that? Wow. An honest, genuine compliment that comes from them, not forced, like Michael said. So when I'm observing students or supervising live, I'll cut them off, or call in if they're doing the cheerleading bit.
and there's an instructor not cheerleading as an example of how not to cheerlead and still do solution focused therapy.
Right. Our clients are very smart and they know when our compliments are real. So we have to be very, very cautious on how we offer them.
All right. So we appreciate everybody coming. This is the end of our presentation. We'll hang on for a few minutes in case anybody does want to hang out and talk, but thank you all and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.
Thank you.